Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Cinema Beans. My name is Travis Bean, and this episode is clocking in 3 months late after my previous episode. Sorry. I had a baby recently. I have a lot of work duties I juggle, and some things just kind of get pushed to the side as you try to manage all that and schedule your time. And Cinema Beans was one of those things, but I really care about it. I want to commit to it. I want to talk more about movies and work through my weird thoughts that I have about movies that no one else seems to have. That's why you're here. You're here to listen to that and give me that support. And today's a doozy. It's one I previewed discussing before. I teased it a little bit because I was known as popular as I can be on Twitter or Letterboxd or anything. I came to be known a little bit for my dislike. Maybe dislike's a heavy word, but I don't share the enthusiasm as much for this movie as everyone else seems to. It's actually the second highest highest rated or most popular. It's one of the two. I think it's most popular movies on Letterboxd ever. Number one being Parasite, another movie I don't really care for, which that's for another video. And the second one is Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I will be talking about today. I'm going to work through my feelings on this. I'm going to go through this piece that I wrote. As you can see, rated it here 2 stars out of 5. 2 stars is usually like the range I mark something as a little more mediocre, where like it isn't necessarily like bad. Like I don't find it offensive or anything. Especially a movie like this. Like it's so kind-hearted and hopeful and optimistic that like I definitely don't have any hard feelings towards it. But I also think it does a number of things that flaw its message and hold it back from achieving the power it's going for, which might be strange to some of you because it's had a positive impact on a lot of people. And I don't mean to take away from that at all. Like if this movie has inspired you in any way and forced you to look inward and think bigger and better about yourself, like that's what movies are for. I love that this movie does that for people. It did, and it didn't necessarily not do that for me. But like I said, I feel like things hold it back from reaching that high level that everyone's placing it on. So I'm going to go through this article that I wrote, this review that I wrote. It's a little bit longer than I usually do with reviews. I've been trying to keep the reviews to like one longer paragraph, like condensing my thoughts a little bit and really just going for the main points I'm trying to hit on a movie. This one was a little bit longer because I was working through a lot of thoughts and I wanted to fully back why I don't like this movie that everybody else in the world seems to like. So I'm going to read it. And as I go through, I'll be running through my thoughts and what I was thinking when I wrote it and all that. So cinema is a beautiful medium that allows stories to visually explore universal truths of life, the struggles we all face as human beings. A lonely journey through space symbolizes the grieving process for Ryan as she copes with the loss of her daughter in Gravity. The alien invasion of the world's end challenges Gary's notion of life fulfillment and forces him to grow up. And the grand interweaving dream within a dream tale of Mulholland Drive represents the pressures of Hollywood and the consequences it can have on people. These tales come to represent our desires to grow, to expand, to evolve in a world that feels like it's increasingly working against us. So this is the main reason I talk about movies and why I love movies is this cool tactic that movies use called defamiliarization. Something Chris and I have talked about for years. It's kind of been like, it was sort of the impetus of everything we do. Once we discovered this word and what it meant in regards to movies, defamiliarization is not so much a metaphor, but it kind of it shows what a story is capable of. So it takes something that's very familiar and defamiliarizes it, makes it unfamiliar. So taking something familiar, like coping with the loss of somebody you love, like in Gravity, you can make a story about a woman who loses her child and watch the drama and grief she goes through in real time, in real life, in very real situations. That is definitely an approach to a movie. It can be powerful based on the way it's shot, based on the way the music comes in, based on the performances, based on all kinds of things, the lightings, the colors. So many different decisions can go into extracting the heart of that story and amplifying the humanity of it and relaying it to people. Or what you can do is put that woman in space where she's trying to flee from her grief, flee from this reality of her life. And then when she's in space, a terrible accident happens that takes away the only other person she has up there and alienates her and makes her alone. And all of a sudden, she's navigating her way through space, trying to cope with being alone, trying to find hope in a seemingly hopeless situation, maneuvering through all of these life-threatening scenarios like space junk, and making it back to Earth where she can find food and shelter, humanity again. That's all a way you can also show the story of grief. It doesn't require you to do the kind of step-by-step real scenario that you would see in just like a plain straight drama movie. Making it sci-fi elevates that scenario suddenly and shows you just what it's like mentally for someone to go through this scenario, that when you lose somebody, it can feel like you're lost in space. And we're going to watch this woman try to find some sort of catharsis to come out the other side of this journey more hopeful and ready to take on her life and become a new person in the wake of something tragic. Same thing happens in the World's End. This guy refuses to grow up, and all of a sudden he's forced into this alien invasion scenario where the only way he can make it to the other side is if he stops acting like he did for so many years. Mulholland Drive, you have a woman who's pushing away the fact that she didn't achieve the American dream, the Hollywood dream, and she's doing it through this scenario that actually ends tragically. But it's told through this really fantastical lens. So that's what defamiliarization is. And that is something, obviously, Everything Everywhere at Once is doing. So let's move on. This is the exact reason people seem to love Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's also the reason why I think it falls way, way, way short of having the same impact as any of the above mentioned movies, which all explore their stories of care and nuance and subtlety. Everything Everywhere All at Once is the exact opposite of subtle, as it so candidly adopts this model to the degree where it loses any and all emotion about 45 minutes in. That was a statement a lot of people had problems with because obviously as the movie keeps going, they think it gains power. But I think I'll get into it a little bit here why as it keeps going, especially by the final third, it feels a little repetitive and, gosh, what's the right word? I don't want to be too cruel or anything, but a little like empty in its cyclical nature. Like it's not saying anything more, not building on the point, and in fact, maybe detracting from it a little bit. Let's keep reading. We'll get to the thoughts that are circling through my head. Life didn't turn out the way Evelyn envisioned, and that's about the extent of it. Aren't we all dissatisfied with our lives from time to time? Don't we wonder what it would have happened if we had dated this person or took that job or made that other decision? You'd think something so simple and relatable would be a perfect fit for a defamiliarized tale. Yet, Everything Everywhere All at Once just beats you over the head with the same point ad nauseum. So, it does make me think of the final third of the movie when, the defamiliarized part is Evelyn keeps visiting all of these scenarios where her life could have gone a different direction, like she's in the kitchen with the cook with like the raccoon on his head, or she chose to become like a movie star. Like you keep seeing all these situations like where her life could have gone, and the defamiliarization there is that, well, I could have lived this life or that life. If I had made this decision, like I would have been a movie star. If I had made that decision, I would have gone this direction. I would have ended up with this person. And that's something we all think about all the time. And this movie plays that out in a fantastical way. I would say, though, the problem with... So the plight of the movie is great. Like, I love it conceptually. But for me, I think it's more of a structural, mechanical problem the movie runs into, where, like, you have that meat, that thematic meat right there, right? You have the defamiliarized portion. What's next? Well, it's giving each of those stories power and showing what it means to the decision you have currently made in the direction you are currently heading, and how it like thinking of those different paths you could take, how it informs how you are now. And overall, of course, the movie does that. That is the catharsis at the end. That is why Evelyn is ready to live the life she's living. But each of those stories throughout, the way each of them unfold and the way the catharsis is reached over and over. Catharsis actually is an important word here that I keep repeating, because each of those individual tales keeps having catharsis after catharsis after catharsis, which is kind of a problem in my mind for a story. Because, like, I guess you can have multiple catharses, but there's kind of is one catharsis in a movie, right? You're kind of realizing one thing. And in each of these tales, Evelyn keeps being pushed to this point where, like, basically what happens is, like, somebody will start giving an extended speech, whether it's her daughter, whether it's her husband, whether it's herself. And as this person is giving this speech, you keep seeing flashes to these other lives Evelyn could have lived. And that happens, I think, like 4 times maybe. in the span of like the last third, it happens like 3 or 4 times. And that, to me, like, on one level, just like kind of annoying. Like, I had just had trouble like watching that, and like I'm supposed to like become reinvested in this exact same structure and montage that's building to a grand point over and over. I can't keep buying into a catharsis after catharsis after catharsis. Like, personally, on my level, like, I can't make myself care that much. It seems strange to me and a little bit cloying and cheap to just like do it over and over. But also, in the end, to me, it kind of just takes away from the final catharsis. Like, you can't have all these different realizations happen throughout the movie. Like, you kind of have one realization, and all of these little stories build to that realization. But they're kind of expecting us to accept like many different little pockets of revelations that happen. And it just, like, on a conceptual level, like, it doesn't click with me. It doesn't make sense. And to me, it loses its power to just like keep repeating the same cycle over and over. So that's kind of what I mean, is like, it hits you over the head with it. Like, it just keeps telling you over and over and over, like, this is the direction your life could have gone. Like, this is what you could have done, but you didn't. And this is what, you know what I mean? Like, it just seems odd. It's an odd structure. And obviously people have a different view of it. Like, people feel very inspired by the movie. And maybe every time like one of these montages happened, like, they felt power. They felt like they were watching something grand. They were watching a spectacle. But I personally was just like, it's happening again. Like, they're doing this again, to the point where at the end, when like the final catharsis happens, I'm kind of like, yeah, like, that was the whole point of the movie, that you should be happy with the life you live, and be happy with the decisions you made, and find meaning in the decisions you made and not regret. Like, of course, that's the point of the movie, that it's 2.5 hours long, and it was like doing all these montages that were definitely going to build to that point. So in my mind, like, it just kind of loses its power in that approach. Moving on. If I could give movies a passing grade for effort, I would. But effort actually works in the opposite direction for this film. I'm thinking maybe I'm getting to this a little bit here. As nearly 2.5 hours of nonstop cuts and settings and colors and character beats does nearly nothing to advance the central theme of the film. I did just talk all about all this. It's all for show, and it left me feeling nothing at the end. Yeah, that's kind of like one little piece of it too. This is just like my personal ticks. Like, what I don't really like is this like nerdy approach to movies. Again, nothing wrong with this. I'm just speaking to like what I don't really like in movies. Like, the idea that like the movie's cool and fun to watch if like you go to all of these different settings and have all of these different characters and all of these different wardrobes. Like, again, I commend the effort. Like, I think it's well done and everybody's doing a great job. But I think the fact that it's doing all of those different, the fact that it's changing so much and going for so much leads people to give it more praise. Where I, on the other hand, do, again, applaud that if it's leading to something. All of that effort can produce a more um, a movie that achieves more, a movie that's doing more and going for more and telling us more and reflecting more and inspiring more. Like it can do that because of all the steps it's taking. But because in my mind, the message isn't expanding and isn't evolving in the way I expect it to with that much work put in, like it starts to drag and it starts to feel showy that it's doing all of these like different cool things that are supposed to be cool. Like the guys with, the dicks, like all that stuff's funny, but like it isn't doing anything, right? Like at some point you're just watching it because it's fun to watch, which is great. Like movies should be entertaining, but I feel like the entertainingness of it, if it detracts from the heart of the movie, it stops being entertaining to me. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. I know I will get pushback for this, as Everything Everywhere All at Once seems to be everybody's favorite movie of the year. People will say, how can you hate on a movie that's trying this hard and doing this much? Look, I think there are great parts in this movie, and people are giving it their all. The acting, the directing, the settings and costumes and sounds, it's all great. I just talked about all this. But I profoundly reject the notion that Everything Everywhere All at Once simply tries harder than a movie like Kimi or Morbius or Dog. I picked those three movies because those seem to be movies from 2022 that people don't like as much, definitely don't like as much as me. Especially a movie like Morbius, which everyone seems to hate, in a movie like Dog, which I don't think anybody saw, and stars Channing Tatum, and it's him and a dog. But yeah, this is something I really latch onto, and part of my plight as a movie critic and a movie analyzer, the idea that Everything Everywhere All at Once does more because of what you see on the surface. Because it has all of these different characters and settings and costumes, it's doing more. You should respect it more. I profoundly reject that notion. I don't believe that. I think a movie can achieve as much as, like, a simple, dramatic indie movie can achieve just as much clarity and speak to humanity just as much as 2001: A Space Odyssey, as The Godfather, as Citizen Kane. I see no reason why these big movies, these big spectacles, are doing more just because they're big movies that are big spectacles. I think there is generally that attitude in the film community, and it seems to be going more and more that way as movies get bigger and bigger. And while Everything Everywhere All at Once is definitely different in its approach, I wouldn't say it's different in what it's achieving thematically, philosophically. All kinds of movies have gone down that path, like all different kinds of time travel movies, like simple things, like any movie where someone thinks about like decisions they could have made and has to deal with regrets of decisions they have made. They're all doing the things that Everything Everywhere All at Once is doing, just in a different format. I refuse to be that narrow-minded and oblivious when it comes to the beautiful art of cinema. Even the simplest of movies that are missing the fast-paced editing and world-building and character catalog of Everything Everywhere All at Once have just as much capability to explore the universal truths of life. Most people don't even realize what movies like Gravity or The World's End or Mulholland Drive are doing on a thematic level. But we know what Everything Everywhere All at Once is doing because it tells us over and over and over. The movie has about 7 monologues where a character philosophizes about life in several different settings, cleanly edited together in the exact same way every single time. And I'm supposed to accept that this movie tries harder than other movies? No way. So that's a little bit more of a sterner way of me making my point there. Perhaps modern cinema isn't the problem. Maybe everybody who makes a movie is giving their all and is trying to say something. So I guess maybe that point doesn't read so well. So maybe modern cinema isn't the problem, but the way we look at movie and the way we read, the way people are trying to say something is the problem. People cannot like Morbius for obvious reasons, like plot holes or narrative, whatever you're choosing for Morbius. You just flat out think like the plot is dumb, but because of that, you end up ignoring a lot of the thematic meat of the movie, the way it kind of looks at the danger of science, the way it looks at someone who's been ostracized by society and is looking to make it back in, who feels disenfranchised a little bit. There are all these interesting things going on in the movie, like interesting stories the characters are experiencing. But because it isn't doing the sort of audience satisfying things that we all expect movies to do, especially big spectacles, we don't give it that same thought that we would give something like Everything Everywhere All at Once. Of course, we could argue about the thematic stuff in Morbius and whether it's done well or not. I have problems with that movie, actually. But I think that surface level is what I'm talking about. It's like most people don't even want to really look past the fact that they think Morbius is dumb. It's dumb. The way people talk are dumb. The character of Morbius is dumb. So like, I don't really care what the movie's doing on a thematic level. That makes the discussion tough. Maybe instead it's the way we've chosen to watch movies and think about movies. That's the problem. I guess that's what I just said. I don't think Everything Everywhere All at Once is a bad movie, but it sure as heck isn't above and beyond everything else. Okay, so that kind of also encapsulates everything I just said. So those are my general thoughts about the movie. Like I said, I don't hate it. I think it's technically well done. It is very different and unique in its approach, but for everything I've laid out, I don't think it's completely separate from every movie ever made, and not even really separate from most of the movies made this year. You can go to filmcolossus.com and see my rankings for this year. I have Everything Everywhere All at Once. You know, it's in the bottom third of my rankings. I think many, many, many movies are doing a better job of a lot of these same themes in a much different format, obviously. So, okay, that's it. I finally talked about it. That was a little scary for me. But glad you listened. Glad you heard me out. If you have any responses to what I've said, if you'd like to talk about it more, leave a comment below. You can leave a comment on my rankings on filmcolossus.com. And okay, that's it. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be back for episode 5. Leave any comments for movies you want me to talk about as well. You can find my Letterboxd account, TL_Bean. You can look at movies I've talked about lately and say, like, I want you to talk about this movie. Like, why didn't you like that? Or why did you like this so much? I'll talk about it. Okay, thanks. See you next time.